I've been talking to you about what's happening on college campuses and the issues of anti-Israeli bias on college campuses, and also the issue of anti-Semitism on college campuses. Now, to be super clear, being anti-Israeli is not inherently anti-Semitic. There is overlap in those two movements, in those two ideologies, but every time we talk about this, I get emails. Being anti-Israeli or critiquing Israeli foreign policy or domestic policy, that is not inherently anti-Semitic, but it has served as cover for anti-Semites in many cases. Now, let's discuss the term occupation for a second. The term occupation is typically used in relation to the current situation in Israel with regard to Gaza and the Gaza blockade, as well as the West Bank, right? So there are debates over, is what's happening in Israel now an occupation of Gaza and the West Bank? Is what's happening in Israel now a logical reaction to the security concerns that are well documented with regard to attacks on Israelis and Israel? This is a question that often comes up. However, Portland State University's Student Senate went a step further, showing that they know absolutely nothing about what's going on in Israel by passing one of these boycott and divestment resolutions, which alleges that Israel has been occupying Palestinian land since its establishment in 1948, and that all Israeli companies and companies that work with the Israeli military must be boycotted. Now, this isn't just Portland State University. In language that is similar, in a BDS resolution from the National Women's Studies Association, they wrote, and I'll put the quote up on the screen for you here, whereas the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land has been entrenched since 1948, during the 1948 Palestine War, over 700,000 Palestinians were expelled, et cetera, et cetera. Again, the occupation starting in 1948. Wait a second. What? We can have a discussion about whether the current situation is a willy-nilly occupation or a situation required by the security realities in the area or somewhere in between, right? That's a very legitimate and important conversation to have. The idea that Israel's mere creation is the occupation is laughably out of this world. And I would love to talk to some of these women's studies individuals who passed this resolution, or people from the Portland State University State Senate that passed this resolution. It's like they think one day Israel appeared and confiscated sovereign Palestinian land. And I've said this before, and it bears repeating. Countries are created one of three ways on this planet. This applies to all countries. One, annexation or purchase. That's one way in which countries are created. Two, war or invasion or takeover. And three, international treaty. Israel was created by international treaty. Its existence is no more or less legitimate than the existence of any other country. If you are going to not do business with companies that do business with Israel, based on Israel being an occupying force, not because of what's going on now in Gaza and the West Bank, but from its mere creation in 1948, you should not be doing business with any American company whatsoever. Because by that same logic, this entire thing we call the United States of America, most of it, and the part that was purchased at a pittance, that's a kind of difficult word to say, for a very small amount of money, a total ripoff, right, from natives that were here before Europeans came. And you could argue that it is just as much of an occupation as what's going on in Israel. But I want to go further, right, because there's a lot of people who don't even realize that Israel was not created from land that wasn't previously some Palestinian country. This goes back to understanding the history of the British Empire controlling the land. And this goes back even further to the Ottoman Empire. It involves Jordan. It is far more complex than any harebrained resolution from the National Women's Studies Association or the Portland State University State Senate would be. But the bigger picture is that this is a pointless resolution. In June, Portland State President Wim Wewell called the resolution divisive and ill-informed, but he also said that there is no practical effect here at all, since the funds for the university are not managed by the state senate. This is a declaration, a boycott, a sanction that has absolutely no impact whatsoever, period. So this is a waste of time on something that is both pointless and factually incorrect. And it's really sad that this nonsense is happening on college campuses across the country.